Is Minecraft Legends best on Switch, or should you buy it on another console like Xbox or PlayStation, and possibly get it for free if you do? In this video, we will determine which version is right for you, and if you're a handheld lover, we'll also take a look at Valve's Steam Deck. Minecraft Legends is a Minecraft spin-off in an RTS style. At first glance, it might seem a tad like the popular Nintendo franchise, Pikmin, but it's not Pikmin, it's Minecraft, and we love Minecraft. See, I even have Minecraft Crocs. This game was revealed during the Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase 2022. It was definitely quite the shocker that we were getting another top-down Minecraft game so soon after the most recent spin-off, Minecraft Dungeons, which was released in 2020. However, while this game might seem similar, it's actually very different. Instead of a dungeon crawler, this time we're getting a real-time action strategy game. It's interesting to see a game that's from a franchise so popular but with such a different gameplay style based on a game like Minecraft. I picked up the deluxe edition, which has all the current DLC included and is the only physical version available right now. But I'm sure in the future there may be more physical versions like we saw with Dungeons. Now, something worth mentioning about this game is that it's very much not Minecraft. So don't buy this game because you think it'll be like it, because it's not. This is a completely different style game with a Minecraft skin. And honestly, the Minecraft franchise is perfect for this style of game. You are tasked with building bases and collecting resources. First, let's jump into the biggest differences, starting with the graphics and performance, as this is always where the Switch lacks the most in most games. As soon as you open up the game, you're greeted with a beautiful cutscene. Well, at least it's beautiful on current-gen consoles, because on the Switch version, we get an extremely compressed, jittery cutscene that looks like it's running at 24 frames as opposed to the 30 frames per second on current-gen consoles. Now, this isn't a huge deal because it's just a cutscene, and this is most likely done to the Switch version to cut down storage space on the cartridge and the system. This is usually what we get on Switch games with pre-rendered cutscene. Comparing the gameplay side by side with the current-gen consoles, you may not instantly notice a difference due to the pixel art style this game has. It's not completely noticeable. You will notice the blocks and the outlines are a lot sharper on current-gen consoles, and the resolution is a lot clearer, with 1080p on last-gen consoles, 1440p on Series S, and 4K on PS5 and Xbox Series X, and the Switch running at a surprising 1080p as well, with dynamic resolution very often bringing the resolution down as more stuff occurs on screen. Thankfully, when it comes to the textures in game, it's not really noticeable because it's such a simple pixel art style. I would even go as far to say the flat textures look identical in all versions, although there are quite a few textures like the short grass across the terrain having more prominent outlines in the current-gen versions. In fact, there's way more foliage in beefier versions like the current-gen consoles, more grass, flowers, and seemingly more trees. Looking side by side with the Series X version, you can see there are a lot more trees and structures filling out the world, but I wouldn't focus on that too much because that's a mix of the randomly generated world and the render distance on Switch. That's another thing you may notice as well. The render distance on Switch is a lot shorter. As I'm walking forward, I can actively see the world generating in front of me, whereas the Series X version, the render distance is far enough that I don't even notice the world loading in. At the end of the day, the render distance shouldn't be a deal breaker. My eyes calibrated to it soon after I started playing, but it may be noticeable when you first jump in. It's mainly in the lighting, reflections, shadows, and frame rate where you'll see the biggest differences. The lighting is phenomenal on current-gen consoles. Like, look at these light rays shining through the trees. These aren't apparent on the Switch version at all. There's also a phasey effect on current-gen consoles that make things like the opening tutorial more mysterious. The reflections are also surprisingly present on Switch, but it's not as clear as the Xbox versions. The shadows on Switch are also more present than I'd expect, because every single asset and mob is dynamically lit on all versions. But the biggest issue I'm seeing is the constant frame dips. While most versions are running at 60 frames per second, this game is running at half at 30. Well, sometimes. Minecraft Legends is actually capped to 60 frames per second, but it's constantly shifting from 25 to 40, and goes lower very often. And there's no clear reason why. This would seemingly happen at random times. It would randomly happen while traversing through the map and when small or large groups of enemies would try and attack. So even though this game is more than playable and can still be enjoyed with the lower frame rate, I'm hoping they'll address some frame rate issues in a future patch of this game. So just for fun, I restarted the game and the console, just in case there was a bug that was giving me some random hitches. Sometimes that might help a performance in a game. And to my avail, it actually worked. I fixed a huge hitching issue simply by restarting the game. So after all that, the frame rate is still pretty choppy, but it's much better. There was a point where I was getting so frustrated that the game was hitching randomly, it got so bad it would skip some button inputs. This type of thing generally happens when there's a memory leak in the code. But now, I'll say the frame rate still goes between 25 to 40 frames per second during gameplay. Realistically, it would have been nice if they had just locked the frame rate at 30, but I guess they were trying for 60. And to be fair, the in-game rendered cutscenes do run well at a somewhat solid 60. One more thing to mention about the frame rate are the golems that you command. On every console, it looks like they're frame skipping to save power. This happens with pretty much all versions, but it's definitely definitely the most noticeable on Switch, because it's the least powerful. Oh, and quickly mentioning the load times, they're quite longer on the Switch, but it's not that big of a deal. But what about the gameplay experience? Is this type of gameplay style the most beneficial on Switch? Does it benefit from being handheld, or does it even matter? Let's find out. The campaign is pretty decent. I haven't completed it yet, but apparently it takes 10 to 11 hours. So if you wanted to, you can complete it in 2 to 4 sessions if you felt like it. But unlike the Minecraft we all know and love, this game isn't one you can spend infinite time on. This is a story-driven game with challenges and fun tasks, and the story isn't really amazing either, but it's enough to keep you invested. I also want to quickly mention the controls. This game honestly has some very well thought out controls that take a little while to get used to, just like any new game. You can direct your cursor with the right stick while moving with the left, and most commands are controlled with the back bumpers and D-pad, while the movement and character combat is controlled with the face buttons. This is all great, and I have no complaints about the Pro Controller controls. But I think it was a huge missed opportunity with the lack of motion controls with the Joy-Con. There's even an entire Joy-Con menu in the settings, but there's no motion controls. Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 3 did this perfectly with the Wii Remote and Joy-Con. It was way easier to play those RTS games because of the speed you can move the cursor. With this game, it's the same thing. There are so many aspects that are similar between the two games, like you even have a whistle for the golems. Just like Pikmin, motion controls would have been beneficial in my opinion. It could have possibly made this one of the best features that the Switch version could offer. This is why PC players might be more speedy in the game, just because it's easier to control the cursor with the mouse. But of course, that's my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you think you'd use motion controls. Oh, and if you're liking the video so far, consider liking and subscribing. Let's talk about multiplayer. This is a mode I enjoyed a lot more than I initially expected to. Multiplayer is a great way to play through the campaign with a friend that also has the game. And as much as it pains me to say this, there isn't a local multiplayer option. This would have been great on Switch. But I can't make this a point solely against the Switch, as there's no version with local split screen. You need to play this online if you want to play multiplayer on any version. Thankfully, it is cross-platform, so a friend that plays on PlayStation or Xbox can play with you on Switch. Thankfully, I subscribed to Game Pass, so I was able to try this out on my Xbox and Switch using separate Microsoft accounts without having to buy the game twice. Did I mention that this game was on Game Pass? So if you're a PC or Xbox player, you can play this game included with your subscription without having to shell out the retail price. So I definitely recommend that route if that's available to you. I think multiplayer shines with the PvP mode. When I first played PvP mode, it took me forever to get into a lobby on day one. People joined and left, and I was probably waiting for almost 10 minutes just to get paired up with 7 other players. Once I loaded into the game, I wasn't really sure what I was doing, as I hadn't even played single player for too long. It's pretty much a 4v4 tower defense game where you build up your squad and try to fight the other team, and it's pretty much all I got from it. Honestly, it's not quite my cup of tea yet, but I think after I get further into the game, I'll revisit it and enjoy it more. And hopefully there are more PvP players so that finding a match is faster. I was able to try this out in a 1v1 match. I had a ton of fun playing this in a private lobby with just me and a friend. We didn't get super in depth with the match because we both were just learning, but it's a cool mode you can enjoy with friends. I wish there was a ranking system of sorts that would make me want to come back, but there's not really anything like that. There's not much incentive to come back to this unless you enjoy the gameplay. But let's talk about the Switch's biggest advantage, handheld mode. Playing this game handheld is fine and may be the way you prefer to play your Switch. And although the game runs fine in handheld mode, it still suffers from the constant frame dips. In fact, they're even a little more prominent. And speaking of frame dips, for some reason, every time I tap the screen while I'm in game, I'm treated to a massive frame drop. It's probably trying to register what I'm doing, and it doesn't know how. But this means that the touchscreen is at least supported, but it's only supported in the menus. And even then, there's a massive delay between tapping and something happening. But wait, as discovered before, after completely resetting the game, everything ran decently fine. The frame rate was actually a bit more consistently higher than in docked after the reset. There was still a bit of a dip when you touched the screen, but nowhere near as bad as before. All that to say, if you are experiencing frame dips, once again, restart the game and it will be fixed, at least for a while. But all that aside, when you are playing the game, you should expect similar comfort to most other games you play handheld. The Joy-Cons may get a little uncomfortable after a while, but that's not the game's fault. But what's great about handheld mode is single player. You don't need to be at home or in front of the TV while playing it. You can be anywhere. And playing this handheld is also a great feature if you bring it to a friend's house and you want to play with them. If they have the game as well, then you can play with separate screens. In fact, you have to play with separate screens. One thing I need to mention about handheld is, of course, the Steam Deck. I can't not mention mention this, as this is the top competitor to the Nintendo Switch. If you want the most intricate experience, this is the way to go. You can even boot it through Steam. And if you have Game Pass, you can download Windows and download it for free. There is something to note about the Steam Deck though. At the time of recording this, it is not Steam Deck verified yet. And that's very apparent because the game crashes at launch on day one on SteamOS. So after quite a while of finagling and installing Windows, I got it to run on the deck. This wasn't the easiest, so if you do plan to play it on the deck, I'd wait until it's verified on SteamOS. And chances are it will be soon, most likely this week. The performance on Steam Deck is great. It runs similar to last gen consoles with more options for graphics and control customization. This game is a lot more insane with keyboard and mouse controls. And if you're a PC gamer, I think you'd really enjoy this, and it'd be easier to get the hang of than a controller. The Steam Deck version plays and runs fantastic and is the best way to play so far in my opinion. Due to the handheld form factor and the power of the device, I was able to get it running at a smooth 1080p 60 frames per second on medium settings and 40 to 50 frames per second on high settings. And on medium settings, this game has overall better graphics compared to the Switch. So realistically, if you have the choice between a Switch and a Steam Deck, you'll probably want to go with the Steam Deck due to the performance and customization. And you can even play it docked with a controller. But I also understand more people have a Switch than a Steam Deck. Honestly, the Steam Deck is the definitive way to play this game handheld. But back to the main question, is it best on Switch? Well, it really depends. Do you have an Xbox or Game Pass? If so, then I would recommend playing it on there or at least testing it out. If you have Game Pass and still want it on Switch, then get it on Switch. But if you don't have Game Pass and you need to buy the game regardless, then it really depends if you plan on playing the game handheld. If you need to play handheld because you only have a Switch Lite or that's your main way to play, then yeah, get this game on Switch. But is it best on Switch? No. But it is perfectly playable if that's your only option. If it's not your only option, then it's your choice. But let me know, do you think it's best on Switch? And if you're getting this game, tell me which platform you decided to get it on. And also, if you want to see my first impressions of the game, you can check out my second channel, Russ Plays Normal Mode. You can watch my first impression. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I hope to see you in the next one. See you later.